My mother-in-law said my daughter needed discipline. So she took her glasses and crushed them under her foot. Then she made my visually impaired child re-clean the kitchen while everyone pretended not to see. I didn't fight her. I didn't argue. I waited. By morning, the house was silent. But before I begin, please like and subscribe to the channel. And we'd love to hear which part of the world are you joining us from. Let us know. Now let's dive into today's story. The house on Mill Creek Road looked like every other house in Westfield, Indiana. White siding, dark shutters, a dogwood tree in the front yard that bloomed pink every April. The lawn stayed trim because Evan paid a service to handle it every Thursday morning. The American flag hung from a bracket by the front door, and the mailbox had their last name stenciled in neat black letters. Caldwell. From the street, everything looked fine. Nina had learned a long time ago that what things looked like from the street didn't mean much. She stood at the kitchen sink on a Sunday afternoon in late September, moving a dish towel across the granite countertop in slow, methodical circles. The kitchen smelled like the roast she'd made for lunch, onions and thyme and beef drippings, and the dishwasher hummed its rinse cycle behind her. Sunlight came through the window above the sink, the kind of warm, golden light that made dust particles visible in the air. Harper stood 3 feet away, one small hand resting on the edge of the kitchen cabinet. She was 9 years old, thin for her age, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail that Nina had braided that morning. Her glasses were thick, the lenses magnifying her brown eyes until they looked too large for her face. The frames were custom-made, ordered from a specialist in Indianapolis because standard frames didn't work with her prescription. Harper had been born with optic nerve hypoplasia. The doctors explained it in clinical terms during those first terrifying months, but what it meant in practice was simple. Harper couldn't see the world the way other children could. She saw shapes better than details. Bright light caused her pain. Reading required special accommodations. Walking through unfamiliar spaces meant orienting herself by touch and memory. Nina had spent 9 years watching her daughter navigate a world that wasn't built for her needs, and she had spent 3 years watching Evan's mother try to pretend Harper's disability didn't exist. Loretta Caldwell sat at the kitchen table now, spine straight, hands folded on the wood surface. She was 67, with short gray hair styled in the same cut she'd worn for 20 years. She wore a cardigan even though it was 70 degrees outside, and her wedding ring caught the light when she moved her hands. Evan sat across from her, scrolling through something on his phone. He was 34, tall like his mother, with the same sharp jawline. He hadn't shaved that morning. He usually didn't on Sundays. Loretta's eyes tracked Harper's movement across the kitchen. Nina felt the weight of that gaze like something physical. "That child drags her feet on purpose," Loretta said. Her voice was flat, matter-of-fact. "She needs structure, discipline." Nina's hand paused on the counter. She felt her jaw tighten, felt the familiar tension climb up the back of her neck. "She can't see well," Nina said. She kept her voice quiet. She always kept her voice quiet when Loretta was in the house. The neurologist said, "I raised 3 boys," Loretta interrupted. "Never made excuses. They all turned out fine." Nina didn't respond. She went back to wiping the counter, even though it was already clean. Harper had been trying to throw something away in the trash can by the refrigerator. She moved carefully, one hand extended, feeling for the edge of the cabinet, then the refrigerator handle, then the space where the trash can sat. Her steps were measured, deliberate. She wasn't dragging her feet. She was being careful. But careful looked like slow to someone who didn't understand. Harper's hip bumped the trash can. It was a light touch, barely anything, but the can tilted slightly. Loretta stood up fast. Nina's breath caught. She turned, dish towel still in her hand, but her body felt frozen, rooted to the floor by something she couldn't name. Fear, maybe. or the weight of 3 years' worth of Sunday dinners where she'd swallowed her words and smiled and pretended everything was fine. Loretta crossed the kitchen in 4 steps. She reached up. She was taller than Harper by nearly 2 feet, and her hands went to Harper's face. She pulled the glasses off with both hands, gripping the frames at the temples. Harper made a small sound, surprised, her hands coming up too late. Loretta held the glasses in front of her for 1 second, 2 seconds, then she dropped them. They hit the tile with a sound that wasn't loud, just a small crack like a branch snapping. Loretta lifted her foot and brought it down on the frames. The crack was louder this time, definitive. Harper gasped. Her hands flew out, searching the air in front of her, trying to understand what had just happened. Her breathing went shallow, rapid. Nina stood at the sink. Her heart slammed against her ribs, so hard it hurt, but her body still wouldn't move. Her hands gripped the edge of the counter, knuckles white, dish towel crumpled between her fingers. Loretta looked down at Harper. Her expression hadn't changed. Calm, measured. Now, clean it again, Loretta said. Properly this time. Harper's hands were still reaching out, trembling. Without her glasses, the world was shapes and shadows. She couldn't see where the broken pieces were. She couldn't see where her grandmother stood. She couldn't see anything clearly enough to make sense of what had just happened. Nina's eyes went to Evan. He was still sitting at the table. His phone was face down on the wood now, but his hands were folded in front of him. He was looking at the table, not at Harper, not at his mother, not at Nina. He didn't stand up. He didn't speak. Nina remembered that silence. She had heard it before, in different rooms on different days. The silence of someone who had decided that not choosing was the same as choosing peace. She looked at Harper, who was crying now, silent tears running down her face, her hands still outstretched. Then she looked at the broken glasses on the floor, and something inside Nina that had been bending for 3 years finally snapped clean through. Harper cried quietly that night, lying in her bed with the covers pulled up to her chin. Nina sat on the edge of the mattress, one hand stroking her daughter's hair. The room was dark except for the night light by the door, a small plug-in shaped like a crescent moon that Harper had picked out when she was 6. "Why does Grandma hate me?" Harper whispered. Nina's hand paused mid-stroke. She felt her throat tighten. She thought about the first year of her marriage. Loretta visiting 3 times a week, letting herself in with the spare key Evan had given her without asking Nina first. Loretta standing in the kitchen, watching Nina chop vegetables, commenting on the way she held the knife. Wrong technique. Inefficient. Loretta asking Evan, in front of Nina, if he was sure he was eating enough, because Nina's portions looked small. Loretta buying Nina clothes for Christmas, a cardigan 2 sizes too large, a scarf in a color Nina never wore, and then saying with a smile that she just wanted to help Nina dress more appropriately. Nina remembered Evan saying that's just how she is. She means well. You're being too sensitive. She remembered biting her tongue until it bled. Your grandma, Nina said slowly, doesn't understand you. And some people, when they don't understand something, they get angry instead of curious. Harper's hand found Nina's sleeve and gripped it tight. But I try so hard. I know, baby. I know you do. Am I bad? Nina's chest ached. She leaned down and kissed Harper's forehead, breathing in the smell of her daughter's shampoo, strawberry, and something sweet. You are not bad, Nina said, and her voice came out fiercer than she intended. You are perfect, and she doesn't get to decide who you are. Harper's breathing evened out after a while. Nina stayed until she was sure Harper had fallen asleep, then slipped out of the room and closed the door with a soft click. The hallway was dark. Nina stood there for a moment, one hand still on the doorknob, and made a decision she had been avoiding for 3 years. She was done pretending. Loretta acted normal at breakfast the next morning. She even smiled when Nina came downstairs. Good morning, Loretta said. She was already at the stove, scrambling eggs in the cast-iron skillet she insisted on using whenever she stayed over. "I made extra. You look tired." Nina didn't respond. She went to the cabinet and took down Harper's medicine, vitamin D supplements, because the neurologist had recommended them, and poured a glass of orange juice. Evan sat at the table with his coffee, scrolling through work emails on his laptop. He glanced up when Nina entered, but didn't say anything. Harper came down a few minutes later, wearing her backup glasses. They were an old prescription, 2 years outdated, and Nina could see Harper squinting even with them on. She moved more slowly than usual, one hand trailing along the wall. "Careful, sweetheart," Nina said, and guided Harper to her chair. Loretta brought the eggs over and set the serving dish in the center of the table. "Eat up," she said brightly. "Growing girl needs her breakfast." Nina felt her jaw clench. She watched Loretta serve herself, watched her smile at Evan, watched her ignore Harper entirely, as if yesterday had never happened. After breakfast, Nina helped Harper pack her school bag. She made sure Harper had her homework folder, her lunch box, her water bottle with the pink lid. She added an extra snack just in case. Then she packed a bag for herself. Clothes, toiletries, Harper's medications, the folder where she kept copies of Harper's medical records, the ones she'd started keeping after the first time Loretta had suggested Harper's vision problems were psychosomatic. Evan noticed when Nina carried both bags to the front door. "Where are you going?" he asked. Nina looked at him. His face was open, confused, like he genuinely didn't understand. "We're leaving," she said. "What? Why?" Nina set the bags down. She kept her voice level, calm. "Because your mother assaulted our daughter yesterday, and you sat there and watched it happen." Evan's expression shifted, not to shame, not to horror, to defensiveness. "That's not. She didn't assault anyone. She was making a point. She destroyed Harper's glasses, medical equipment, on purpose." She was frustrated, Evan said. Harper wasn't listening. Nina laughed once. It was a short, sharp sound that surprised them both. "Harper's 9, Nina said. "She's blind, Evan. She was doing her best, and your mother punished her for it." "My mother raised 3 kids. She knows what she's doing." "Your mother," Nina said, and her voice dropped lower, quieter, the way it always did when she was furious, "destroyed medical equipment that cost us $800. Equipment Harper needs to function. Equipment that takes 3 weeks to replace. And you're defending her." Evan crossed his arms. "She's my mother." Nina picked up the bags. "And Harper is your daughter." She walked out the door before he could respond. She didn't say goodbye to Loretta. Nina's sister lived in an apartment complex off State Road 32, 20 minutes from Westfield. The building was older, with thin walls and a parking lot that needed repaving, but the rent was reasonable and the neighbors minded their own business. Rachel opened the door before Nina could knock. She must have been watching from the window. "Jesus," Rachel said, taking in Nina's face, the bags, Harper standing pale and quiet behind her. "Get inside." The apartment was small. 1 bedroom, which Rachel immediately offered to Harper. A pull-out couch in the living room, which Nina insisted would be fine. Rachel made tea even though it was 10 in the morning, and they sat at the kitchen table while Harper settled in the bedroom with Rachel's old tablet, watching videos with the brightness turned down low. "Tell me," Rachel said. Nina told her. All of it. Not just yesterday, but the 3 years before. The comments, the criticism, the way Loretta corrected everything Nina did, from how she folded laundry to how she scheduled Harper's doctor appointments. The way Evan always took his mother's side, always said Nina was overreacting, always suggested that if Nina just tried harder to get along with Loretta, everything would be fine. Rachel listened without interrupting. When Nina finished, Rachel was quiet for a moment. "You should have called me sooner," Rachel finally said. "I know. You should have left sooner." "I know." Rachel reached across the table and gripped Nina's hand. "You're safe here. Both of you. Stay as long as you need. Nina felt something in her chest loosen. Just slightly. Thank you. What are you going to do? Nina looked toward the bedroom, where Harper was. She thought about the way Harper had cried last night, asking why her grandmother hated her. She thought about Evan sitting at the table, silent, choosing his mother over his daughter. She thought about the broken glasses on the floor. I'm going to make sure it never happens again, Nina said. The next morning, Nina called Greenwood Pediatric Vision Center and explained the situation. The receptionist transferred her to Dr. Amanda Reyes, the optometrist who had fitted Harper's glasses 2 years earlier. Bring her in, Dr. Reyes said immediately. We'll see her today. The appointment was at 2 o'clock. Nina drove Harper to the clinic, helped her navigate the waiting room, and held her hand while they waited for their names to be called. Dr. Reyes was in her 40s, with kind eyes and steady hands. She examined Harper's old glasses first, the ones Harper was currently wearing, and made notes on her chart. These are significantly outdated, Dr. Reyes said gently. She's been struggling with these, hasn't she? Yes, Nina said. Then Nina pulled out the broken glasses from her purse. She had put them in a plastic bag, careful not to lose any of the pieces. Dr. Reyes took the bag and examined the frames without removing them. Her expression shifted, became more focused. She set the bag on the examination table and made more notes. These were intentionally crushed, she said. It wasn't a question. Nina nodded. Yes. Can you tell me what happened? Nina told her. She kept her voice steady, factual. She explained that Loretta had pulled the glasses off Harper's face and stepped on them deliberately. She explained that this had happened in front of multiple witnesses, including Harper's father, and that no one had intervened. Dr. Reyes listened without interrupting. Then she asked Harper very gently, "Sweetheart, can you tell me what you remember?" Harper's voice was small. "Grandma took my glasses. She dropped them. Then she stepped on them. It hurt my feelings." Dr. Reyes nodded. She made more notes, then looked at Nina. "I'm going to document this as destruction of medical equipment and medical neglect," she said. "This isn't just property damage. These glasses are essential medical devices. Without them, Harper can't function safely in her environment. That makes this a health and safety issue." Nina felt relief wash through her, so strong it made her dizzy. "Thank you." Dr. Reyes printed out copies of everything. The examination notes, the documentation of the damaged glasses, the medical assessment of Harper's current vision challenges. She put everything in a folder and handed it to Nina. "Keep these," Dr. Reyes said. "If you need anything else, letters, additional documentation, testimony, you call me directly." Nina took the folder. Her hands were shaking. "I will." They ordered new glasses. Rush processing. Flexible frames this time, the kind that were harder to break. Dr. Reyes called in favors to get them expedited and promised Nina they'd be ready within a week instead of 3. When they left the clinic, Nina put the folder in her bag and felt its weight like armor. That evening, Evan showed up at Rachel's apartment. Nina opened the door and didn't invite him in. "We need to talk," Evan said. "No," Nina said. "We don't." "Nina, come on. This is ridiculous. You're overreacting." Nina felt anger rise in her chest, hot and sharp. "I'm overreacting. Your mother destroyed our daughter's glasses, and I'm overreacting." She didn't mean it like that. Nina stared at him. "How did she mean it, Evan? How do you accidentally pull glasses off a child's face and stomp on them?" Evan shifted his weight, uncomfortable. She was making a point. About respect. About listening. "Harper is 9 years old and legally blind," Nina said, and her voice rose despite her best efforts. "What point could possibly justify destroying her medical equipment? You're making this into something it's not. Then what is it?" Evan ran a hand through his hair. "Look, my mom, she's old-fashioned. She doesn't always understand Harper's needs. But she's trying. She loves Harper. Does she? Nina said flatly. Yes, she does. She has a different way of showing it. Nina laughed. It was a bitter sound. Breaking a child's glasses is love now. You're twisting everything. No, Nina said. I'm seeing clearly for the first time in years. Evan's jaw tightened. You embarrassed my mother. Walking out like that. Making a scene. She's upset. Nina felt something cold settle in her stomach. She's upset. Yes. Your mother destroys Harper's glasses, and she's the one who's upset. She didn't mean to hurt Harper. She did hurt Harper, Nina said. Her voice went quiet again, dangerous. And you're standing here, right now, defending her instead of your daughter. Evan crossed his arms. She's my mother, Nina. What do you want me to do? Turn my back on her? I want you, Nina said slowly, to be a father. I want you to protect our child. I want you to tell your mother that what she did was wrong and that it can never happen again. It won't happen again. Just come home. We'll talk about it. As a family. Nina shook her head. No. Nina. You keep choosing her, Nina said. Every time. Every single time you choose her. When she criticizes how I parent. When she undermines my decisions. When she tells Harper that she's lazy or dramatic or making excuses. You choose her. That's not fair. And Harper is your daughter, Nina said again. And you watched your mother hurt her, and you did nothing. Evan's face flushed. I'm trying to keep this family together. By letting your mother abuse our child? It's not abuse. Then what is it? Nina demanded. What do you call it when an adult deliberately destroys a disabled child's medical equipment as punishment? Evan didn't answer. That was the answer. Nina stepped back and put her hand on the door. Leave, Evan. Nina, please. Leave. He stood there for another moment, jaw working, and Nina could see him trying to find the right words, the right argument that would make her bend the way she always had before. But she was done bending. Go back to your mother's house, Nina said quietly. I'm sure she needs you. She closed the door in his face. Nina didn't rush to the police. She thought about it carefully, methodically, the way she approached everything. She started with Harper's school. The next morning, Nina went to Westfield Elementary and asked to speak with Mrs. Patricia Brennan, the school counselor. Mrs. Brennan was in her 50s, with gray-streaked hair and a calm demeanor that made children trust her. Nina explained the situation. She showed Mrs. Brennan the medical documentation from Dr. Reyes. She explained that Harper had been without her proper glasses for 2 days now, that she was struggling in class, that the incident had caused her significant emotional distress. Mrs. Brennan listened carefully, taking notes. Then she asked Nina if she could speak with Harper privately. Of course, Nina said. Harper came to the counselor's office during her lunch period. Nina waited outside, watching through the small window in the door as Mrs. Brennan spoke with Harper gently, asking questions, offering tissues when Harper started crying. The conversation lasted 20 minutes. When Harper came out, Mrs. Brennan asked Nina to step back inside. I'm required to file a report, Mrs. Brennan said. What you've described, combined with what Harper has told me, constitutes child abuse. I have to report it to Child Protective Services and local law enforcement. It's mandatory. Nina nodded. She had expected this. She had hoped for it. I understand, Nina said. This isn't a reflection on you, Mrs. Brennan added quickly. You've done everything right. You removed Harper from the situation. You sought medical care. You're protecting her. But the law requires me to report instances of child abuse and destruction of medical equipment combined with the emotional distress Harper's experiencing. That meets the threshold. Thank you, Nina said, and she meant it. Mrs. Brennan filed the report that afternoon. 2 days later, Nina received a call from a detective with the Westfield Police Department. His name was Detective Morris. He asked if Nina would be willing to come to the station to file a formal police report. Nina went the next morning. The police station, Smelled like coffee and cleaning solution. Detective Morris met her in the lobby, a man in his early 50s with graying temples and a wedding ring on his left hand. He led her to a small interview room with a table and 3 chairs. "Tell me what happened," he said, and pulled out a notepad. Nina told him everything. She started with Sunday afternoon. The broken glasses, the witnesses. She gave him Dr. Reyes's contact information, Mrs. Brennan's name, the medical documentation she had brought. Detective Morris took careful notes. He asked questions that were specific and direct. How long had Loretta been staying at the house? Had there been prior incidents? What had Evan done during the incident? Nina answered everything honestly. When she finished, Detective Morris set down his pen and looked at her directly. "What you're describing is criminal damage to medical equipment and child endangerment, at minimum," he said. "I'm going to investigate this fully. That means I'll need to interview witnesses. Your husband, Harper, anyone else who was present. I'll need to collect the damaged glasses as evidence. And depending on what we find, charges may be filed." "I understand," Nina said. "Are you prepared for that?" Detective Morris asked. "Because once we start this process, it's out of your hands. The prosecutor makes the charging decision, not you. And if charges are filed, it could get ugly. Family situations usually do." Nina thought about Harper crying in bed, asking why her grandmother hated her. She thought about Loretta's face, calm and cold, as she stepped on those glasses. She thought about Evan sitting at the table, silent. "I'm prepared," Nina said. Detective Morris nodded. "All right then. Let's get this documented." Nina gave him the broken glasses in their plastic bag. She signed forms. She provided contact information. And when she walked out of the police station an hour later, she felt lighter than she had in 3 years. Loretta called that evening. Nina was helping Harper with homework when her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and saw Loretta's name. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Hello. What the hell do you think you're doing?" Loretta's voice was shaking with rage. Nina walked into Rachel's bedroom and closed the door. "I'm protecting my daughter. The police came to my house." "The police? Do you have any idea how humiliating that is? Do you have any idea how humiliating it is to watch your grandmother destroy your medical equipment?" Nina asked. Her voice was calm, cold. "I was teaching her a lesson. You assaulted a child. I did no such thing. She needed discipline. She needed to learn respect." Nina sat on the edge of Rachel's bed. "Harper has low vision. She can't see properly without her glasses. You took them off her face and destroyed them on purpose. That's not discipline. That's abuse." "Don't you dare call me an abuser," Loretta hissed. "I raised 3 sons. I know how to handle children." "Then you should know better," Nina said. "But you don't. Or you do, and you just don't care. Evan told me you've poisoned Harper against me." Nina closed her eyes. "Evan is protecting you, like he always does. I'm his mother. And Harper is his daughter," Nina said for what felt like the 100th time. "But apparently that doesn't matter to either of you. You're tearing this family apart." Nina felt anger flare, hot in her chest. "No, you tore this family apart when you hurt my daughter. I'm just making sure you can't do it again. Evan will never forgive you for this." "Then Evan and I have nothing left to discuss," Nina said. She hung up. Her hands were shaking, but not from fear. From relief. From release. She had spent 3 years biting her tongue, swallowing her anger, trying to keep the peace, trying to make a family work, even when half of that family refused to see her daughter as fully human. She was done trying. Evan came back 2 days later. This time he brought his mother. Rachel opened the door and immediately tried to close it again, but Evan caught it with his hand. "We need to talk to Nina," he said. "No, you don't," Rachel said firmly. "Please." Nina appeared behind Rachel. She looked at Evan, then at Loretta standing beside him, her face tight with anger. It's fine, Nina told Rachel. Then, to Evan, you have 5 minutes. They stood in the hallway outside Rachel's apartment. Nina crossed her arms and waited. Evan spoke first. Mom wants to apologize. Nina looked at Loretta. Is that true? Loretta's jaw was clenched. I overreacted. I shouldn't have broken Harper's glasses. It wasn't an apology. It was a concession, forced and resentful. Nina didn't react. Is that all? Loretta's eyes flashed. What more do you want? I said I was wrong. No, Nina said calmly. You said you overreacted. You said you shouldn't have broken the glasses. You didn't say you were sorry. You didn't acknowledge that you hurt Harper. You didn't admit that what you did was abusive. It wasn't abuse. It was, Nina interrupted. It was deliberate, it was cruel, and it caused harm to a disabled child. That's the definition of abuse. Loretta's face went red. I would never abuse a child. How dare you? You already did, Nina said. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't waver. You abused Harper. And now you're standing here, trying to make it sound like you just made a small mistake. Like you knocked over a glass of water. Evan held up his hands. Let's everyone calm down. I am calm, Nina said. She looked at him. But you need to understand something. This isn't about your mother apologizing. This isn't about me accepting an apology and moving past it. What your mother did was a crime. She's being investigated by the police. That's happening whether she apologizes or not. You could drop it, Evan said. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. Nina felt something like pity stir in her chest. He still didn't understand. No, she said simply. Nina, please. She's my mother. I know. She didn't mean to hurt Harper. Yes, Nina said. She did. She meant to hurt her. She wanted Harper to feel small and afraid. And it worked. Loretta made a sound of outrage. That's not. I was trying to teach her. You were trying to punish her, Nina said, for being disabled, for not meeting your expectations, for existing in a way that made you uncomfortable. That's not true. Then why did you do it? Nina asked. She looked directly at Loretta. Harper bumped a trash can. A trash can. And you responded by destroying her medical equipment. Why? Loretta opened her mouth, then closed it. Her face twisted with something that might have been shame, but looked more like anger. She needs to learn. She's 9, Nina said. She's 9 years old and blind, and you punished her for not being able to see. Do you understand how twisted that is? Evan stepped between them. This isn't helping. Mom, maybe we should go. No, Loretta said. I want to know why she's doing this. Why she's trying to destroy our family. I'm not destroying anything, Nina said. I'm protecting my daughter. That's what mothers do. I'm a mother, Loretta snapped. Then act like one. The silence that followed was thick, heavy. Finally, Evan put a hand on Loretta's arm. Come on, Mom. Let's go. They turned to leave. Nina was about to close the door when Loretta looked back over her shoulder. Evan will never choose you over me, she said. You'll see. Nina held her gaze. He already has. He just doesn't know it yet. She closed the door. Detective Morris called Nina a week later. I need to ask you some questions, he said. Can you come back to the station? Nina arranged for Rachel to watch Harper and drove to the police station. Detective Morris met her in the same interview room as before. I've completed most of my investigation, he said, pulling out a thick folder. I've interviewed Harper, your husband, and Mrs. Caldwell. I've reviewed the medical records. I've collected the physical evidence. Nina waited. I also found something interesting, Detective Morris continued. When I ran Mrs. Caldwell's name through our system, an old case popped up from about 15 years ago. Nina felt her pulse quicken. What kind of case? Child endangerment. The charges were eventually dropped, but the report is still in the system. Mrs. Caldwell was babysitting a neighbor's child, a 6-year-old girl. The parents came home and found bruises on the child's arms. Mrs. Caldwell claimed the girl had fallen. The parents didn't believe her. They filed a report. What happened? The parents dropped it after Mrs. Caldwell's lawyer got involved. It was turned into a civil matter, settled quietly. But the report exists, and it shows a pattern. Nina's throat felt tight. A pattern of what? Of Mrs. Caldwell using excessive force with children, Detective Morris said, especially children she perceives as difficult or disobedient. Nina thought about Harper, small and quiet, trying so hard to do everything right. Oh, God! I want you to understand something, Detective Morris said. This case is stronger than I initially thought. We have physical evidence, the broken glasses. We have medical documentation showing Harper's need for that equipment. We have Harper's statement, which is consistent and credible. We have your statement. And now we have prior history showing this isn't an isolated incident. What does that mean? It means the prosecutor is going to charge Mrs. Caldwell, and those charges are going to be serious. Nina sat back in her chair. How serious? Child abuse, criminal damage to medical equipment, endangerment. With the prior history, the prosecutor might push for enhanced charges. What would that mean? For sentencing? Jail time, Detective Morris said bluntly. Not prison, county jail, but real time, not just probation. Nina should have felt triumphant, vindicated. Instead, she felt tired. When will charges be filed? Within the next week. Mrs. Caldwell will be notified. She'll need to appear in court for arraignment. Nina nodded slowly. And Evan? He witnessed everything. Will he be charged? No. Failure to intervene isn't a crime in Indiana unless he was in a position of authority over the child at the time. A teacher, a coach, someone like that. As a parent witnessing another adult's actions, he has no legal obligation to intervene. Even though it was his daughter. Morally? Yes, absolutely. Legally? No. Nina felt a mixture of anger and resignation. Evan would face no legal consequences for his silence, but she supposed that was its own kind of justice. He would have to live with the knowledge that he had stood by and done nothing while his mother hurt his child. There's one more thing, Detective Morris said. The prosecutor is going to need Harper to testify, not at the arraignment, but if this goes to trial. Are you prepared for that? Nina thought about Harper, brave and scared all at once. Will she have to see Loretta? She'll be in the same courtroom, yes, but we can make accommodations. She won't have to sit near her, and the prosecutor is very good with child witnesses. I'll prepare her, Nina said. She's stronger than people think. I believe it, Detective Morris said. She'd have to be, with what she's been through. The charges were filed 6 days later. Nina knew because Evan called her at 9 in the morning, his voice shaking with barely controlled rage. They arrested my mother, he said. Nina was in Rachel's kitchen, making breakfast. She set down the spatula and walked into the living room, out of Harper's earshot. I know, she said. You did this. No, your mother did this when she assaulted Harper. She's being charged with child abuse. Child abuse, Nina. They took her in handcuffs. Do you know how humiliating that is? Do you know how humiliating it is to be 9 years old and have your grandmother destroy your glasses in front of your father, who does nothing? Evan was silent for a beat. Then, you're destroying our family. Our family was destroyed the moment you chose to protect your mother instead of your daughter, Nina said. I'm just making sure everyone can see it now. She could go to jail. Good. Good. Evan's voice cracked. You think it's good that my mother might go to jail? I think it's appropriate, Nina said. I think she hurt a child and she should face consequences. That's how justice works. Justice. Evan spat the word like it was poison. This isn't justice. This is revenge. No, Nina said firmly. Revenge would be finding your mother alone somewhere and breaking something of hers. Justice is using the legal system to hold her accountable. There's a difference. I can't believe you're doing this. I can't believe you're still defending her. Silence. Then Evan's voice, quieter now, almost pleading. What do you want from me? Nina closed her eyes. I wanted you to be a father. I wanted you to protect Harper. I wanted you to tell your mother that what she did was unacceptable and that you wouldn't tolerate it. But you didn't do any of those things. So now I don't want anything from you. Nina. I'm filing for divorce, she said. You'll get the papers next week. She heard him suck in a breath. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious in my life. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can. Evan, Nina interrupted. You sat at that table and watched your mother abuse our daughter, and you did nothing. There's no coming back from that. Not for me. But I love you. Nina felt something crack in her chest. Not her resolve, that was solid as stone, but something softer. Something that had once believed him. Maybe you do, she said, but you love your mother more. And I can't live with that anymore. She ended the call. Loretta's arraignment was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in late October. Nina didn't attend. She had no legal reason to be there, and she didn't want to subject Harper to seeing her grandmother in a courtroom setting yet. But Detective Morris called her that afternoon with an update. She pleaded not guilty, he said. Her lawyer is pushing for a dismissal based on insufficient evidence. The judge denied it. The case is moving forward. What happens next? Discovery. Both sides exchange evidence. Then we'll likely go to trial in the spring. The prosecutor thinks it's a strong case, but you should be prepared for Mrs. Caldwell's defense team to come after you. Come after me how? They'll paint you as vindictive, overprotective. They'll suggest you're coaching Harper, that you're exaggerating the situation because you have a grudge against your mother-in-law. It's standard defense strategy in family cases. Nina felt a chill run down her spine. Will it work? Not if we present our case properly. We have the physical evidence. We have medical testimony. We have Harper's consistent statements. We have the prior report. The defense can throw mud, but the facts are on our side. Okay, Nina said. Thank you for telling me. There's one more thing. The prosecutor wants to meet with you and Harper before the trial, to prepare Harper for testifying. Would that be all right? Yes, Nina said. Whatever Harper needs. Harper's new glasses arrived 3 days later. Nina drove to Greenwood Pediatric Vision Center to pick them up, and Dr. Reyes personally fitted them for Harper. The new frames were pink with flexible arms, designed to bend without breaking. The lenses were the same prescription as before, and when Dr. Reyes settled them on Harper's nose, Harper's whole face lit up. I can see, Harper said, looking around the examination room with wonder. Mom, I can see the clock on the wall. I can see the chart. Nina felt tears prick her eyes. That's wonderful, baby. Dr. Reyes smiled. How do they feel? Any pinching? Harper shook her head. They feel good. Really good. On the drive home, Harper stared out the window, pointing out things she'd been unable to see clearly for weeks. Trees, street signs, a dog in someone's yard. I forgot how much I was missing, Harper said quietly. Nina reached over and squeezed her daughter's hand. You're never going to miss it again. I promise. That night, after Harper was asleep, Nina sat at Rachel's kitchen table with a glass of wine and a laptop. She opened a new browser tab and searched for divorce lawyers in Hamilton County. She found 3 with good reviews and experience in custody cases. She emailed all 3, explaining her situation briefly, and asked for consultations. By the time she closed the laptop, it was past midnight. But Nina felt more certain of her path than she had in years. Evan's lawyer sent the divorce papers 3 weeks later. Nina had expected a fight, but the terms were surprisingly simple. Evan wanted joint custody of Harper. He wanted to keep the house. He wanted Nina to drop the criminal case against his mother. Nina called her lawyer, a woman named Patricia Chen who specialized in family law, and laughed when she read that last clause. "He can't make you drop criminal charges," Patricia said. "The state filed them. Only the prosecutor can drop them." "I know," Nina said, "but I think he genuinely believes I have that power. Like I'm doing this to punish him." "Are you?" Nina thought about it honestly. "No, I'm doing this to protect Harper. If punishing him is a side effect, I can live with that." Patricia made a note. "We'll respond with our own terms. You want primary physical custody, correct?" "Yes, and I want supervised visitation for Evan until I'm sure he can be trusted to protect Harper." "On what grounds?" "He witnessed his mother committing child abuse and did nothing," Nina said. "That shows a failure to protect. I don't trust him to keep Harper safe if Loretta is around." "That's reasonable. I'll draft it and send it over for your review." "Thank you." "One more thing," Patricia said. "The criminal trial is scheduled for March. The divorce proceedings will likely overlap. Are you prepared for that?" "Yes," Nina said. "It's going to be hard. Emotionally, I mean. You'll be dealing with the end of your marriage and the criminal trial at the same time. Do you have support?" Nina thought of Rachel, who had given up her bedroom and her privacy to house Nina and Harper. She thought of Dr. Reyes, who had documented everything carefully and offered to testify. She thought of Mrs. Brennan at Harper's school, who checked in on Harper weekly. "Yes," Nina said, "I have support." Christmas came and went quietly. Rachel bought a small tree and let Harper decorate it with paper ornaments. Nina made cookies with Harper, the kind with colored frosting that got everywhere. They watched movies and played board games, and didn't talk about the trial that was looming in March. Evan sent gifts for Harper: a dollhouse, books, a stuffed animal shaped like a rabbit. Harper opened them politely and said thank you when Nina had her call Evan, but she didn't play with most of them. "Does Daddy hate me?" Harper asked one night. Nina set down the book they'd been reading. "No, sweetheart. Why would you think that?" "Because he hasn't come to see me. Only presents." Nina felt anger and sadness tangle in her chest. Evan had visitation rights. He could see Harper every other weekend if he wanted, but he hadn't used them once since Nina left. "Your dad loves you," Nina said carefully, "but he's confused right now. He doesn't understand why what Grandma did was wrong. And until he does, it's not safe for you to see him." "Will he ever understand?" "I don't know, baby. I hope so." Harper was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I'm glad we left." Nina pulled her daughter close. "Me too." January brought freezing rain and a phone call from Detective Morris. "Trial date is set," he said. "March 15th. The prosecutor wants to meet with you and Harper next week to start preparing." Nina marked the date on her calendar. "We'll be there." The prosecutor's name was Jennifer Okafor, and she met with them in a conference room at the county courthouse. She was in her mid-30s, with dark skin and a professional but warm demeanor that immediately put Harper at ease. "Harper," Jennifer said, crouching down to Harper's eye level, "I'm going to ask you some questions about what happened with your grandmother. Is that okay?" Harper looked at Nina, who nodded encouragingly. "Okay," Harper said quietly. Jennifer led her through the story gently, asking specific questions about what Harper had seen, heard, and felt. How had Grandma taken off her glasses? What happened next? How did it make Harper feel? Harper answered each question, sometimes pausing to think, sometimes crying quietly. Nina held her hand through the whole interview. When it was over, Jennifer gave Harper a box of tissues and a small stuffed bear. "You did so well," she said. "You were very brave." Then Jennifer turned to Nina. "She's a strong kid." "I know," Nina said. "The defense is going to try to discredit her testimony. They'll say she's too young to remember accurately, or that you've coached her. But her story has been consistent every time she's told it. That matters. What about Loretta's lawyer? Thomas Brennan. He's local, competent, but not exceptional. He's going to argue that Loretta was disciplining Harper appropriately, that breaking the glasses was accidental, or at least not malicious. He'll paint Loretta as a concerned grandmother trying to teach a difficult child. Nina felt her jaw tighten. Harper isn't difficult. She's disabled. I know. And that's exactly what we're going to emphasize. Harper's disability isn't a behavior problem. It's a medical condition. And destroying her medical equipment isn't discipline. It's abuse. Will Evan testify? Jennifer nodded. He's on the defense's witness list. He'll testify that the situation has been blown out of proportion, that you're vindictive, that Loretta loves Harper. She doesn't, Nina said flatly. I know, but he'll say it anyway. We're prepared for that. February was a blur of preparation. Nina met with Patricia multiple times to finalize divorce terms. She met with Jennifer to review her testimony. She helped Harper practice answering questions without feeling scared. Rachel kept them fed and sane. She made dinners when Nina was too tired to cook. She played games with Harper when Nina needed quiet. She never complained about the invasion of her space. You're saving our lives, Nina told her one night. Rachel hugged her. You're saving Harper's. I'm just making sure you can. The divorce papers were finalized in late February. Evan signed them without contest, except for the custody arrangement. He wanted unsupervised visitation. Nina refused. The judge sided with Nina, granting her primary custody and requiring supervised visits until Evan could demonstrate consistent, protective parenting. Evan didn't fight it in court, but he called Nina afterward, his voice hollow. You've taken everything from me, he said. I didn't take anything, Nina said. You gave it up when you chose your mother. I never chose. You did, Nina interrupted. You chose her every day for 3 years, and now you're paying the price. She hung up before he could respond. March 15th arrived cold and gray. Nina woke at 6 in the morning, her stomach churning with nerves. She showered quickly, then helped Harper get ready. Harper wore a blue dress that Nina had bought specially for the occasion, something nice but not too formal. Her pink glasses caught the light when she moved her head. I'm scared, Harper said while Nina braided her hair. I know, sweetheart, but you're going to do great. All you have to do is tell the truth. What if I forget something? Then you say you don't remember. That's okay. You're not expected to remember every detail. Harper was quiet for a moment. Then, will Grandma be there? Nina's hands paused in Harper's hair. Yes, but she won't be able to come near you. And you don't have to look at her if you don't want to. What if she gets mad? She's not allowed to say anything to you. The judge won't let her. Harper nodded slowly. Okay. They arrived at the courthouse at 8:30. Jennifer met them in the lobby, professional in a navy suit, and led them to a small waiting room. The defense is going to try to delay, Jennifer said. They always do. But we're ready. Nina, you'll testify first. Then Harper. Then we have Dr. Reyes and Detective Morris. What about Loretta? She'll testify in her own defense, and Evan will testify for her. Jennifer looked at Nina carefully. Are you ready for that? Nina thought about watching Evan defend his mother on the stand, about hearing him lie or minimize or deflect, about seeing him choose Loretta one more time. Yes, she said. I'm ready. The courtroom was smaller than Nina had expected. Wood-paneled walls, rows of benches, an American flag in the corner. The judge's bench sat elevated at the front, imposing and formal. Loretta sat at the defense table with her lawyer, Thomas Brennan. She wore gray suit and pearls, her hair carefully styled. She looked like someone's sweet grandmother. She looked nothing like the woman who had crushed Harper's glasses underfoot. Evan sat in the gallery behind the defense table. His eyes met Nina's when she entered, and she saw something pleading in his expression. She looked away. The judge entered, Honorable Rebecca Martinez, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. Everyone stood. "Be seated," Judge Martinez said. "We're here for the trial of State of Indiana versus Loretta Caldwell. Will the prosecution present their opening statement?" Jennifer stood and walked to the center of the courtroom. She looked at the jury, 12 people who would decide Loretta's fate, and began to speak. "This case is about a grandmother who hurt a child," Jennifer said simply. "Harper Caldwell is 9 years old. She was born with a vision disability that requires her to wear specialized glasses. Without those glasses, Harper cannot see well enough to navigate her environment safely. On September 24th of last year, Harper's grandmother, Loretta Caldwell, deliberately removed those glasses from Harper's face and destroyed them. This was an accident. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment. This was intentional, punitive, and cruel, and it caused harm to a vulnerable child." Jennifer outlined the evidence they would present, the medical records, Harper's testimony, the broken glasses themselves, the prior report of child endangerment. When she finished, Thomas Brennan stood for the defense's opening statement. "Loretta Caldwell is a mother and a grandmother who has dedicated her life to her family," he began. "She raised 3 sons, all successful, all well-adjusted. She has never been convicted of any crime. She has never harmed a child. What happened on September 24th was a misunderstanding, blown out of proportion by a daughter-in-law who resented Mrs. Caldwell's presence in the family. The glasses were damaged, yes, but it was not malicious. Mrs. Caldwell was trying to teach Harper a lesson about taking care of her belongings, and things got out of hand. That's not abuse. That's grandparenting." Nina felt rage burn in her chest. Harper hadn't damaged her glasses. Loretta had, but Brennan was already twisting the narrative. Jennifer called Nina to the stand first. Nina walked to the witness box, raised her right hand, and swore to tell the truth. Then she sat down and looked out at the courtroom. Jennifer asked her to describe what happened on September 24th. Nina told the story calmly, methodically. She described the Sunday afternoon, the kitchen, Harper trying to throw something away, the way Loretta had moved fast, pulling the glasses off Harper's face, dropping them, stepping on them. "What did your husband do?" Jennifer asked. "Nothing," Nina said. "He sat at the table and said nothing." "How did Harper react?" "She was terrified. She started crying. Without her glasses, she couldn't see where the broken pieces were. She couldn't see anything clearly." "What did Mrs. Caldwell say after she destroyed the glasses?" Nina met Jennifer's eyes. She told Harper to clean again, properly this time. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Jennifer introduced the broken glasses as evidence. The jury passed them around, examining the crushed frames, the shattered lenses. Then it was Thomas Brennan's turn for cross-examination. "Mrs. Caldwell," he said, standing, "you and your mother-in-law didn't get along, did you?" "No," Nina said. "She criticized you frequently?" "Yes." "Offered unsolicited advice about parenting?" "Yes." "That must have been frustrating." Nina saw where this was going. It was frustrating enough to want to get back at her. "I didn't want to get back at her," Nina said evenly. "I wanted her to stop hurting my daughter." "But you admit you resented her presence in your home." "I resented her treatment of Harper, yes." Brennan nodded, as if this confirmed something. "So when the glasses were damaged, you saw an opportunity. An opportunity to file charges, to remove Mrs. Caldwell from your life permanently." Nina kept her voice steady. "I saw an opportunity to protect my daughter from further abuse." "Abuse is a strong word, Mrs. Caldwell." "It's an accurate word, Mr. Brennan." He smiled thinly. We'll let the jury decide that. When Nina stepped down, Jennifer gave her an encouraging nod. Then she called Harper to the stand. Harper walked to the witness box slowly, one hand trailing along the railing. The bailiff helped her into the chair and adjusted the microphone down to her height. Jennifer approached gently. Harper, can you tell the jury what happened on September 24th? Harper's voice was quiet but clear. I was in the kitchen. I was trying to throw something away. I bumped the trash can a little bit. Then Grandma got mad. What did she do? She took off my glasses. She pulled them right off my face. Then what happened? Harper's voice wavered. She dropped them on the floor. Then she stepped on them. I heard them break. How did that make you feel? Scared. I couldn't see without them. Everything was blurry. Did your grandma say anything? She told me to clean it again. She said I needed to do it properly. Were you trying to do it improperly before? No, Harper said, and tears rolled down her cheeks. I was trying my best. I just can't see very good. Jennifer handed Harper a tissue. You're doing great, sweetheart. Just a few more questions. Did your dad say anything when this happened? Harper shook her head. No, he just sat there. How did that make you feel? Sad, like nobody cared. Nina watched from the gallery, tears streaming down her own face. Harper was so brave, so heartbreakingly brave. Thomas Brennan approached for cross-examination. Harper, he said gently, your mom doesn't like your grandmother, does she? Harper looked confused. I don't know. Your mom and your grandmother argue a lot, don't they? Sometimes. And your mom has told you that your grandmother is mean, hasn't she? Harper frowned. Grandma is mean. But did your mom tell you to say that? No, Harper said. Grandma broke my glasses. That's mean. Brennan tried a few more questions, but Harper's answers remained consistent. She hadn't been coached. She was telling her truth. Dr. Reyes testified next, explaining Harper's medical needs, the cost and importance of the glasses, and the documentation she had made of the intentional destruction. Detective Morris testified about the investigation, the prior report, the pattern of behavior. By the time the prosecution rested, it was nearly 4 in the afternoon. Judge Martinez recessed until the next morning. Day 2 began with the defense's case. Thomas Brennan called character witnesses first, people who had known Loretta for years, who testified that she was kind, patient, devoted to her family, a neighbor, a woman from her church, one of Evan's brothers who flew in from Ohio. Then Brennan called Evan to the stand. Nina watched her soon-to-be ex-husband walk to the witness box. He looked thinner than she remembered. Tired. Mr. Caldwell, Brennan began. You were present on September 24th when the glasses were damaged, correct? Yes. Can you describe what happened? Evan shifted in his seat. Harper was cleaning up in the kitchen. She bumped the trash can. My mother got frustrated because Harper wasn't being careful. She took off Harper's glasses to make a point about taking care of her things. The glasses fell and got stepped on. It was an accident. Nina felt fury rise in her throat. An accident. He was calling it an accident. Jennifer stood for cross-examination. Mr. Caldwell, you testified that the glasses fell and got stepped on. Did they fall out of your mother's hands? I think so. You're not sure? It happened fast. But you were sitting right there, correct? At the kitchen table. Yes. How far away? Maybe 10 feet. And you saw your mother take the glasses off Harper's face? Yes. Did Harper resist? No. Did Harper try to grab the glasses back? No. So your mother had full control of the glasses when she removed them from Harper's face? Evan hesitated. Yes. And then what happened? They fell. Jennifer walked to the evidence table and picked up the broken glasses in their plastic bag. She held them up. Mr. Caldwell, these glasses didn't just fall. The frames are crushed. The lenses are shattered. Does this look like damage from a fall? Evans stared at the glasses. His face went pale. Maybe she stepped on them after they fell. Accidentally. Silence. Mr. Caldwell, did your mother step on these glasses accidentally, or did she step on them on purpose? Evan's jaw worked. Nina could see him struggling, torn between truth and loyalty. I don't know, he finally said. You don't know, Jennifer repeated. You were 10 feet away, watching, and you don't know if your mother intentionally destroyed your daughter's medical equipment. Or do you know and you're just unwilling to say it? Thomas Brennan objected. Judge Martinez sustained it, but the damage was done. The jury had seen Evans' hesitation, his unwillingness to protect his own daughter even now. Jennifer pressed harder. Mr. Caldwell, your daughter testified that she was scared when this happened. Did you comfort her? Not right away. Why not? I was trying to process what had happened. For how long? I don't remember. Did you at any point that day tell your mother that what she did was wrong? Silence. Did you apologize to Harper? Later, yes. How much later? That night. So your daughter spent hours believing that nobody cared that she'd been hurt because you waited until that night to acknowledge what happened. Evan's eyes filled with tears. I didn't know what to do. You didn't know what to do, Jennifer repeated quietly. Your mother hurt your child, and you didn't know what to do. She let that sit with the jury, then returned to her seat. Finally, Thomas Brennan called Loretta to the stand. She walked up with her head high, confident. She swore the oath and sat down. Mrs. Caldwell, Brennan began, please tell the jury what happened on September 24th. Loretta's voice was steady, practiced. Harper was helping clean the kitchen. She's a sweet girl, but she can be careless. She bumped the trash can, and I was worried she might hurt herself. I took off her glasses because I thought they might fall off and break, but then they slipped out of my hands. I tried to catch them, but I accidentally stepped on them instead. It was a good story. Concerned grandmother. Unfortunate accident. It was also a complete lie. Jennifer stood for cross-examination. Mrs. Caldwell, she began, you testified that you took off Harper's glasses because you were worried they might fall off and break. Is that correct? Yes, but taking them off didn't prevent them from breaking, did it? It was an accident. You said the glasses slipped out of your hands. Where were you standing when this happened? In the kitchen. More specifically, were you standing on tile, wood, carpet, tile? So the glasses slipped from your hands and fell onto tile, approximately 3 feet, correct? Yes. Jennifer walked to the evidence table. Mrs. Caldwell, I'm looking at these frames. They're not just cracked. They're crushed, flattened. How do you explain that from a 3-foot fall onto tile? I stepped on them by accident. How? I was trying to pick them up, and I stepped on them instead. You were trying to pick them up with your foot. Loretta's face flushed. No, with my hands. But I stepped on them first. So you bent down to pick them up, but before you could, you stepped on them? Yes. How is that physically possible? If you were bending down, your foot would be behind you, not in front where the glasses fell. Loretta faltered. I was moving. I misjudged. Jennifer looked at the jury, making sure they saw the inconsistencies. Mrs. Caldwell, have you ever been reported for child endangerment before? Thomas Brennan shot to his feet. Objection. Prior bad acts. Goes to pattern of behavior, Your Honor, Jennifer said. Judge Martinez considered. I'll allow it. Jennifer turned back to Loretta. Have you? That was dismissed, Loretta said tightly. Answer the question. Have you ever been reported for child endangerment before? Yes, Loretta admitted, but the charges were dropped. Why were you reported? A misunderstanding. I was babysitting and the child had bruises. The child you were caring for had bruises, and you were reported for child endangerment. They were from a fall. And 15 years later, another child in your care is injured, and you claim it's an accident. Do you see a pattern, Mrs. Caldwell? Objection. Brennan called again. Sustained. Move on, counselor. Jennifer nodded. No further questions. Closing arguments came the next morning. Jennifer stood before the jury and summarized the evidence. The broken glasses, Harper's testimony, the medical documentation, Evan's admission that he didn't know if it was an accident, Loretta's prior report. This was not an accident, Jennifer said. This was intentional, cruel, and harmful. And Loretta Caldwell needs to be held accountable. Thomas Brennan argued that the prosecution had failed to prove intent beyond reasonable doubt, that Loretta was being unfairly vilified for a genuine accident. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they returned, the foreperson stood and read the verdict. On the charge of child abuse, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of criminal damage to medical equipment, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of child endangerment, we find the defendant guilty. Loretta's face went white. Evan put his head in his hands. Nina held Harper close and felt something that might have been relief. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. Judge Martinez had reviewed the pre-sentencing report, the victim impact statements, and the recommendations from both sides. She looked at Loretta with an expression that was equal parts stern and disappointed. Mrs. Caldwell, she began, you have been found guilty of abusing a vulnerable child. This was not a momentary lapse in judgment. This was intentional, calculated, and cruel. Harper Caldwell trusted you as her grandmother, and you betrayed that trust in the worst possible way. Loretta sat rigid, her face a mask. The court takes into consideration your prior history. This is not your first report of child endangerment, and that demonstrates a troubling pattern. It also demonstrates that previous interventions have not corrected your behavior. Judge Martinez paused. The court sentences you to 18 months in county jail, with credit for time served. Upon release, you will be on probation for 3 years. You are prohibited from contact with Harper Caldwell during that time. You will also pay restitution for the damaged glasses, medical costs, and counseling expenses. 18 months. Not long in the grand scheme of things, but long enough. Loretta's face finally cracked. She looked at the judge with something like shock, as if she had genuinely believed she would walk away with a fine and probation. Bailiff, Judge Martinez said, please take Mrs. Caldwell into custody. They led her away in handcuffs. Evan turned to Nina as they left the courtroom. His face was wet with tears. Are you happy now? He asked. Nina looked at him for a long moment. I'm not happy. I'm just done watching people hurt my daughter. She took Harper's hand and walked away. Spring came to Indiana slowly, bringing warmer days and the smell of earth waking up. Nina signed the final divorce papers on April 12th. The judge granted her primary physical custody of Harper, with Evan getting supervised visitation every other weekend. He hadn't used most of them. Nina found an apartment in Carmel, a small 2-bedroom with a park nearby. Harper loved the park. She could navigate the paths easily, and the swings made her laugh. They moved in over a weekend, with Rachel's help. It wasn't much: second-hand furniture, dishes from Target, curtains Nina had sewn herself, but it was theirs. Safe, quiet, free. One Saturday afternoon in late April, Nina and Harper walked along Mill Creek Trail, the same trail that ran near the old house. The air smelled like fresh grass and honeysuckle, and birds called from the trees overhead. Harper wore her pink glasses, the flexible ones that couldn't break easily. She walked with confidence now, her hand in Nina's, but not gripping as tightly as she used to. Mom, Harper said, I had a good dream last night. Yeah? What about? I dreamed we were at the beach. You and me and Aunt Rachel. And we were building sandcastles. Nina smiled. That sounds nice. Maybe we can go to the beach this summer. Really? Really? Harper squeezed her hand. Mom. Yeah, baby. Thank you for not letting Grandma hurt me again. Nina's throat tightened. She stopped walking and knelt down so she was eye level with Harper. She put her hands on Harper's shoulders and looked at her daughter. Brave, beautiful, stronger than anyone had a right to ask a 9-year-old to be. I will never let anyone hurt you, Nina said. Not ever again. That's a promise. Harper nodded and wrapped her arms around Nina's neck. Nina held her close, breathing in the smell of her daughter's hair, feeling the steady beat of her heart against her chest. When they pulled apart, Harper smiled. It was a real smile, bright and unburdened. They kept walking. The trail stretched ahead of them, dappled with sunlight through the trees. Behind them, the old life faded further and further into the distance. Nina didn't look back. She had spent 3 years looking back, watching for danger, waiting for the next criticism, the next conflict, the next moment where she'd have to choose between keeping the peace and protecting her daughter. She had made her choice, and now, walking in the spring sunshine with Harper's hand in hers, Nina felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. It was hard-earned, fought for, paid for with sleepless nights and courtroom battles, and the dissolution of a marriage that had stopped being a marriage long before the papers were signed. But it was real, it was permanent, and it was deserved. Harper pointed to a bird on a branch, and Nina told her it was a cardinal. They watched it together for a moment before it flew away, a flash of red against green leaves. Then they walked on, mother and daughter, into a future that belonged only to them. The silence around them wasn't fear anymore. It was peace, hard-earned, permanent, and deserved.